Welcome to Aligned and Soulful Leadership. My name is Kavita Melwani, and I empower soulful, multicultural women of color to opulently shine their light without the hustle. I truly believe you can fulfill your soul's desire without losing yourself, your health, or your life in the process. I know that you can ignite your confidence and know your worth, all while walking your divine, unique path. So in this podcast, I will dive deep into topics, challenges, and blocks that women of color experience as they rise up into their aligned life and work. My deep desire is that BIPOC women can lead through their inner wisdom in a way that honors their soul. Are you ready to rise up as the leader you were born to be? Then this podcast is for you. What do you think of as your purpose? Do you feel like you are fulfilling your purpose every day? Or do you feel like you're still searching for why you're here? What is the purpose of my life? How do I spend this precious life that I have so that I know that I can fulfill the reason and use my life in the best way possible? So whatever the question is for you, wherever you are with this question about your purpose, this podcast is for you. So now if you are a woman of color and a leader, then you're in the right place because I am focusing on topics that support you. And so I have heard so much information. I've learned and trained a lot about purpose. And there are lots of perspectives of what are the things that define a purpose? How can we find our purpose? Is there one big purpose that we all have, or do we have multiple purposes that we serve on this planet, in this life? And so there's so many different perspectives, and so it's really up to you to pick what yours is. But I will say that you just living each and every day is fulfilling part of your purpose. By showing up authentically, by being yourself, by following your heart, that is starting the process of fulfilling your purpose in this world. And I don't think that the purpose is just your career or just your business or just your roles. It is much greater than that. And so I did have a podcast episode called What is Your Purpose? And how to find yours. And so that is in season 1, it's episode 21 in the last season. So you can go back and listen to that if you like. And in that, I talk about a lot of these myths about your purpose. So as a woman of color in leadership, there are some things that may be getting in the way of you really, really owning your purpose. And some of these come from being maybe a first, second generation immigrant, or, just because of the way you look and the way the world is. So I know that there are a few things that have stood in my way. And when I bring them to you and make them conscious, then you can actually work with them. Then you can actually move past them and then choose consciously. And so that's why I'm bringing them to light today. Okay. So one of the first things is that, and I've talked about this in other ways before and for other aspects, and that is about not having this modeled for us. So most of us that come from these backgrounds where there was struggle, the purpose of life was to survive. And so what was modeled for us was survival. It was not about that, feeling that fulfillment. And if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the self-actualization piece is on the top of that pyramid. And that has to do with, really feeling that fulfillment, that knowing that you are fulfilling your purpose brings. So when you're in survival mode and you're just thinking about making it, right? You're just thinking about, I need to pay my bills or I need to survive. It's really, really difficult to look past that. Okay. And so what was modeled for us, for a lot of us, is the sense of your purpose is to survive. Your purpose is to find the way that you can function in this world, to be able to generate income in a way, and there are certain acceptable paths for that. So that's one, right? You've probably not grown up with a model of someone fulfilling in their dreams and following their dreams. It was more, had more models around you of survival. And so that then the second part of this is, I know that I've heard for some people, and maybe this is different for you. And in my case, I was not taught that the world is my oyster, as they say, right? And so for a lot of people, they were taught that. They were taught that they could do anything that they wanted. They just had to take the steps. They just had to work hard enough, or just had to believe that they could do it. And I was not taught that. That was not the model for me. And I know that's not been the model for a lot of my clients, because they don't feel like the world is their oyster. They don't see that. There were certain doors that were not open. And there are still some doors that are pretty hard to move past, right? So then you don't feel that expansiveness of possibility that maybe some others have felt. And so that also limits your ability to dream big, to look into what are all the options available to me? What can I do? What does my heart truly desire? And am I allowed to go in that direction? And so those doors are not always open. Not all the doors felt like they were open to you. And thankfully, since childhood to now, there are more things available, and I've seen the possibilities. And so that is something that's been stopping you. You can recognize that and move past that, move past the idea that the world is not your oyster, and instead shift into the mindset that anything is possible. Okay, so that is probably some kind of the subconscious programming that I've discussed before, right? We have so much subconscious programming that impacts our behavior, and we don't question it because that's just how we function, and our world view is colored with those perceptions. And so then the other part of that is, this idea of mobility. I know that I've always felt like there were certain parts of the world, certain parts of this country and other countries that I would not necessarily fit in as easily. And that also felt like another limitation to fulfilling my purpose. And I see, especially this last year and a half, so many people that are acquaintances have moved, right? They've moved, they've followed that heart desire of wanting to live somewhere else. That heart desire that's pulled them to make that shift and change to their external environments. And, just so much satisfaction, so much more life satisfaction, paths opening up for them by making these shifts and changes, which takes a lot of courage to do. Right? It's much easier to stay where we are than it is to make those shifts and changes. So I applaud all of those people, all of you that have made those shifts and changes into where you live. It does take a lot. I know I've moved so many times myself, and every time I've moved, there's an adjustment period. There's a figuring out the local culture, even if it's the same country, right? Especially in the United States, there's so many different cultures, even just, within the same state. And so really figuring out the local culture, figuring out where you fit in, not feeling that grounding of knowing. So that creates the sense of not feeling fully there yet. Okay. So making those changes take courage. And then On one side of that is that feeling that some of us have of the limitation. Well, there are certain areas of the country that I just simply don't feel like I would be welcomed. I wouldn't feel the same comfort level, right? So there are those limitations, and those limitations that are, maybe in my mind or not. They feel very real to me. And so those limitations feeling like constriction, and that constriction that I'm feeling can impact how I view the world and my purpose, and, the ability to do things that my heart desires, right? So, is that impacting you? Ask yourself, right? Do these limitations that I've mentioned, the limitations of possibilities of what doors are open to you, the limitations of where you think it's possible for you to live, and the limitations of not really seeing that model of pursuing the dreams and following their purpose, and instead of like survival mode, right? Of that kind of mindset. And notice if any of those pieces resonate with you. And I'd love for you to go into that, those thoughts and feelings that, maybe touch a nerve. Maybe you feel uncomfortable hearing this, right? So that's an invitation for you to go inward and explore what that's about. And the other part of finding your purpose and fulfilling your purpose is what's acceptable as a career path or a business. So I know, for a lot of us, depending where we grew up, what was an acceptable career in your family? And so it may have been that you grew up in a family where an acceptable career was to a certain level, right? Maybe it was only acceptable to work in the technical trades, or maybe it was only acceptable to be in the engineering, doctor, comp sci types of careers. It was only acceptable to work in corporate jobs, or it was only acceptable to have your own business. Like, what is it? What was acceptable in your household growing up? So even though you may do something different and you may have moved past what was defined as acceptable, that has impacted you. It does impact you, your mindset of what you are allowed to do. And so just recognizing what is that for you. What was acceptable? What was allowed? What was seen as, what you can do? And, we have a deep desire to belong. We have a deep desire for community, a deep desire to be part of that tribe, right? And so it makes sense that we want to choose, make our decisions in a way that feels in alignment with what we were taught is the right things. Those are the ways you belong in society. Those are the ways you are in culture. And those are the ways that you will be accepted, seen, loved, heard. And so what if your heart desire is different? What if your purpose is to be different? What if your path is different? So just asking yourself those questions, right? To open up. I'm asking you and bringing these things to light so you can start to open up those areas that you may have felt were close to you. Opening up how these subconscious limitations that you're putting on yourself, those limitations that you put on yourself without even realizing that you were putting them on yourself. Right? So that's why I'm sharing that with you, these things with you today. And so how do you go past these limitations and move into your purpose? I mean, the first thing is always to bring them to light, right? And when they're hidden in your subconscious, they are impacting you without you even realizing they're impacting you. So bringing them forward, bringing them into the light is going to help you move past these limitations. And then, oftentimes when we bring these to light and say, oh, my idea of what is an acceptable career has been limiting the possibilities. there were all these things over here that I did not consider. And some things might be desirable, but now I don't really know who I am and what I want. And so then you go into that exploration phase, which can feel uncomfortable. Right? It can feel uncomfortable to try to figure out. And so part of that is to, go into your psyche, your subconscious mind. And part of that is to take action and take steps to where your heart leads you. And then as you take those steps, you modify, you continue to check in and move forward. And that's something that I have helped so many clients do over the years. And I love seeing the shifts and changes that happen in their lives. And so, I'm going to offer that to you. If you are resonating with what I'm sharing today and you're ready to fulfill your purpose and you are ready to move past your limitations and see and open up to the possibilities, then set up a call with me. I have the link available in the show notes. We will get on the phone. We will dive into what is happening for you and whether working together is a good fit. Even just connecting for those 30 minutes or so on that call. I've had people say that was helpful in moving them forward even through those complimentary calls, right? So if that is something you're interested, I'd love to speak with you. And until, next time, I want you to ponder those questions that I brought up for you today. What is stopping you? What are those limitations that you were programmed to believe that you can't move past? Right? Sit down and journal about them. Just allow those questions to sit. Sometimes the insights come when you're going for a walk or you're driving, in the shower, your dreams, whatever those insights come, listen. So until next week, take good care. Bye. Thank you for joining me for Aligned and Soulful Leadership. I was inspired to start this podcast as a way to empower women of color to rise up into their aligned leadership. Remember, I will have all the resources I mentioned during this episode available in the show notes at alignedandsoulfulpodcast.com. I'm your host, Kavita, and if you enjoyed this podcast, please tell your friends. And if you haven't received my free abundance meditation and exercise, then go to alignedandsoulfulleadership.com and subscribe to my newsletter, and you will receive this powerful visualization and exercise to ignite your abundant life. Thank you. Until next time, take good care. Bye.